Hey folks, sometimes bigger isn't better, and truth be told, as much as I love my full ATX system, sometimes the sheer size of it does throw up some inconveniences. You need to move it, well, you're basically going to need to do a health and safety assessment before trying. You want it to blend seamlessly into your living room? Not a chance. Okay, so I may be a little bit late to the ITX party here, with the 170mm square form factor being well over a decade old, but with the advent of the Ryzen 2000 series and their fabulous and cheap 2200G APU, it seemed like the perfect time to dive in. And that's where this comes in, ASROCks X370 Fatality ITX motherboard. And I'll just start by saying I'm an absolute convert of this ITX form factor. While Micro ATX felt like a kinda chopped down or compromised version of the ATX ethos, the mini-itx genuinely feels well thought out and compact, and well, it's just plain cool to see. So to test out this board, I wanted to see just how simple a system I could actually build. It might not seem like a big thing, but cables, well, they're a pest. And in a small chassis, the need for cable management is greatly amplified. So what better way to solve that than, well, just not use cables at all? By using the Ryzen 2200G APU with its integrated Vega 8 graphics, it simplifies things quite a bit, no worrying about space constraints for a GPU or additional PCIe power cables. And the same thing for storage. By opting for an M.2 SSD, we can interface directly with the motherboard via the slot on the rear and don't need to run any additional SATA data or power cables. So for a basic simple build, these are the parts we're using today: the ASRock X370 Fatality mini-itx motherboard, AMD's Ryzen 2200G, a 128GB M.2 SSD, 2x4 sticks of Corsair Vengeance 3000MHz DDR4, and a Corsair CX550M, a 550W modular power supply. The Ryzen 2200G APU costs under 3 figures, and at the time of recording, overclockers here in the UK has got it going for less than 80 quid, and that offers quite a lot of bang for your buck, being a true quad-core chip with a 3.5GHz base clock and Vega 8 integrated graphics in one neat little package. Now, it wouldn't be like me just to use the included fan, so what we're going to do is use this fan here. The fan that was originally found on my Ryzen 7 1700, the Wraithspire RGB. It's rated for 95 watts, and that should help if we decide to start pushing the clocks up past the 3.7GHz boost clock or overclock the GPU on the chip, which the X370 Fatality board is going to be more than happy to oblige to. The M.2 SSD is a used part that I found on eBay, and it was taken from a 2018 HP desktop, and while it might not be the fastest drive in town, for this build it's going to be perfect, and it's still going to be multiple times faster than a mechanical. The RAM kit is an 8GB kit of Corsair Vengeance DDR4 3000, and when using the Ryzen APUs you really want 2 sticks to take advantage of dual channel memory, and the faster the better, so it's not really just a case of buying 2 sticks just to fill up the Fatality's 2 slots and look good. There is going to be tangible performance benefits by doing it this way. Now, DDR4 prices are still really hard to swallow, and new, this kit has got to set you back about £100, but used kits can actually be had for a little bit cheaper if you look. Finishing things off, we've got the Corsair CX550M semi-modular PSU. For my main build last year, I went with the TX650M gold rated power supply, and it's been brilliant, it's silent, it's cool. The CX550M, it is a cheaper unit, but it features the same design and the modularity that comes with its bigger brother. And it also comes with the same flat black cables, which makes tidying things up in the future a breeze. For this build though, we'll only need the 24-pin motherboard connector and the 8-pin CPU connector. So the semi-modular design is absolutely perfect, and we're not actually going to need to use any of those modular cables. PSUs readily available for about 50 quid, or a bit less if you shop around, as they're regularly on sale and seem to be reduced quite often. And that's basically it, no frills, all the components we're going to be using. Now back to the ASRock Fatality board. This is the backbone in the system. And having spent some time actually talking to ASRock about their boards, one thing was clear: these guys and girls absolutely love small form factors, and it really shows. I've built on many boards over the years, and there's always little niggles that make you sit back and think, why? Whether that's trying to cram in unneeded features in a weird location, or skimping out unexpected features just to cut costs. And with the ASRock board, one thing that stood out to me is the attention to detail and just the amount of value in terms of features they try and cram into this for the end user. Now, it might seem a little bit cheeky, but I actually wanted to know why. Surely when they could just cut back a few of these features and increase their profit margins. And the guys at ASRock, they were more than willing to open up about their reasons and philosophy for doing what they're doing. As you might know, ASRocks started off life as an offshoot of Asus Tech, and despite now being an entirely separate entity and indeed a direct competitor to Asus, Gigabyte and MSI, perception of being a sort of Asus B brand is something that ASRock is determined to knock on the head, and in all honesty they seem to be doing just that. If you watch the channel you'll know that, for the moment anyway, my main rig has got the Asus ROG Strix branded motherboard, and it's a good board. The offerings from ASRock though are giving you the same, if not more, features at a lower price and often using better components on the boards too, and it does start to make you question if it's really worth paying more and getting less simply for the designer or gaming focused name. But I'm digressing here, and we've got a board that's got a lot more to it than simply looking good on some B-roll. Quick overview of the features on the board, and we get everything we expect: RGB LED headers, dual band Wi-Fi, Sound Blaster Cinema 3 audio, Intel LAN PCI Express slot, it's a steel slot reinforced as you would expect from a high-end board, and an Ultra M.2 slot, a 32GB per second PCIe Gen 3x4 slot for your M.2 SSD, which still supports the slower SATA 3 M.2 SSD drives as well. In your box it's a standard affair: manuals, 2 black SATA cables, an M.2 retention screw, and a Fatality branded input-output shield. Perhaps not so standard is the inclusion of the dual band Wi-Fi antenna for the integrated Wi-Fi card, which I always love to see on a motherboard. Having a look at the board in more detail, one of the first things you're going to notice is the location of the power connectors. The 24 pin is nestled alongside the front of the board beside the USB 3.0 header and the SATA ports, as well as the usual array of power and reset pins. This actually pushes the RAM slot inwards a bit towards the CPU, meaning that it is quite tight around the CPU socket area. A nice feature of these RAM slots though is that they're actually pushed a little bit towards the top of the motherboard, giving that extra little bit of clearance for expansion cards, especially ones with backplates, which is great if you've ever had the misfortune of having a chunky GPU too close to the RAM slots and trying to wrestle it free. You can know how much of a pain that can be. At the other side of the board, the VRM section is pushed out beside the rear I/O, but the ATX 8-pin is easily accessible even though it's snuggled into the Vrm Heatsink. And it's actually good to see an 8-pin power connector here, as a little Ryzen 2200G, it loves to overclock, so we're going to have plenty of juice for that, or more importantly any other chip in the Ryzen 1000 or 2 series line. One thing to note, and this is probably just me, the Vrm Heatsink actually fits on either orientation, but it will only allow you to fit the cooler if it's pointing towards the rear I/O shield, something to bear in mind if, like me, you take things apart and end up putting them in the wrong way. The M.2 slot is located on the back side of the board, and that's got to be great for that tidy no wires look we're going for today. It's also nice to see the VRM and chipset heatsink screwed in rather than using the plastic retention pins of old, which can often end up looking really tatty and fitting really poorly after a few removals. It's a simple thing really, but it's all these little touches that add up to a really good quality product, and ASRock have these little things nailed down. The rear I/O is pretty clean. From the top left we've got a Fatality USB mouse port, the regular USB 2.0 mouse port, a PS2 port for mouse or keyboard, 2 HDMI ports, USB 3, USB Type-C, the Intel RJ45 port for Ethernet, another 2 USB 3 ports, the 7.1 channel audio and optical out, and the Wi-Fi antenna connectors. There is a large space above the HDMI ports, and it kinda seems to be a bit of a missed opportunity, seeing as there are actually more USB 3 functionality available from the CPU and chipset. For an X370 branded board it would have been nice to see a couple more USB 3 ports, but it's not really a huge miss. Likewise, having 2 HDMI ports rather than 1 HDMI and 1 DisplayPort might seem like an oversight, but in reality a lot of ITX builds end up in the living room where HDMI is the prevalent connection, so this was probably done by design rather than missed off by accident. Now it should be noted you can actually get this board pretty much identical in the B350 chipset, and the only major difference between the B350 and the X370 boards is actually the Wi-Fi solution. The B350 version uses a slower Intel solution with a maximum speed of 433 megabits per second, whereas the X370 uses a higher spec, giving you a speed of 867. Remember though that these are maximum theoretical speeds, and your Wi-Fi access point is still likely going to be the bottleneck in your network. The Wi-Fi cards themselves are located in a vertical MPCIe slot next to the rear audio assembly and held down with an encompassing metal shroud. But if Wi-Fi is not your thing, the Ethernet solution is an Intel-based WGI2118T. It's a tried and trusted chip, so compatibility and reliability here is going to be great. The audio solution on these boards is the Realtek ALC1220. And these are paired with a couple of fine gold caps instead of the black 12K caps found elsewhere on the board. Most of the fan headers are located at the top of the board. Here we've got the chassis fan header, the CPU fan header, and we've also got the LED fans if you've got your Ryzen stock cooler. Generally speaking, in mini-itx cases, you're not going to have more than a few fans, and this board will be able to accommodate that no problem. In the initial run of these FATAL1TY boards, there was another difference between the B350 and the X370, and that was the Vrm Cooling. Trawling back through forums, the thermal pads used on the B350s were significantly thicker, and this would lead to less heat transfer. What is nice though is that ASRock did actually listen to the community, and in all new batches of the FATAL1TY board, we see the same Vrm Heatsink that was initially used on the X370. So it's always great to see a company actually listening to the desires and complaints of their customers. So you can see that for such a small board, it's actually pretty jam-packed full of features. It looks great, and everything seems to be laid out in logical locations. The support from ASRock with this board has also been great, from the aforementioned changing of the Vrm Heatsink after customer feedback, to the fact that they've had techs working day and night updating the BIOSes on all these boards in their warehouse in order to support the Ryzen 2000 CPUs. Yep, that's right, I had no need to boot in with my Ryzen 7 CPU in order to update the BIOS. The Ryzen 2200G booted up first time, and if you get a board that's been shipped to the supplier in the last month or so, chances are your BIOS will have already been updated too. Assembly was really easy, and a quick boot up and install a Windows 10 onto the speedy M.2 SSD and we're pretty much good to go. The definition of hassle-free setup. Even slotting it into the Ryzen Tech sticks that was sitting on the shelf as a temporary house was a breeze. Building in this ASRock FATAL1TY X370 ITX AC board was really satisfying, and while yes, there is a question if the better Wi-Fi setup on the X370 really justifies that £20 to £30 or so over the B350, that's the only real difference here, and it's really got to be for you to decide if you can take advantage of that. Either the B350 or the X370 is going to make a great choice for an ITX build, and with the new Ryzen 2000 APUs, it's a platform that really suits the board well. Of course, this board is still going to be able to support my Ryzen 7 CPU with 8 cores and 16 threads and a discrete GPU, which is something we're probably going to have to test a little bit down the line, as I'm really interested to see how compact and how powerful a system we can actually build. But for the money, it's not only a really good ITX board, it's a great board full stop. And if you were ever sitting on the fence about going ITX and fearing losing what makes the AM4 platform so good, don't be. I'll be releasing another benchmark and tweaking video, but to give you a preview, I've actually managed to clock the RAM at higher speeds on this ITX board than in any of the ATX or Micro ATX boards I've had from ASUS over the past year. The cost, performance, features and quality of this thing is absolutely right on the button. But that's it for today folks. Tell me, what do you think of ASRock? For me, the design value and the support and passion shown by those working there has firmly cemented in my head the fact that they are a top tier manufacturer these days, and I simply wouldn't hesitate to recommend this ITX Fatality board to anyone. But I'd love to know your experiences with ASRock, especially with their newer stuff compared to their older stuff, and what you would like to see from them going forwards. The phantom graphics cards. In all seriousness though, I'm completely sold on ITX, and my mind's starting to race around with the possibilities of where the setup can actually go, but you're going to have to wait until next week until its new home comes in. If in the meantime though you have any ideas, be sure to let me know. But thanks for watching this video. I know it's been a little bit longer than normal, but it's just been so much fun, and I've really enjoyed playing around with this Fatality board. I'll have another video up soon looking at the BIOS, overclocking and testing that little Ryzen 2200G, so remember to hit that subscribe button and the bell icon to get notified when that comes out, and a big thanks to ASRock for actually putting up with me and answering a lot of my questions and taking the time to chat with me too. It was really interesting, and it's always good when you can converse with a manufacturer. But folks, as always, take care, and I'll see you all in the comment section down below, and in the next video.